Ready to roll?
Frederick, you've already tasted two. Very cool.
Yeah. So,
So it's only a surprise for you, Andrew.
yeah, but I mean, I enjoy the surprise.
Hmm.
The surprise I'll have to fake for the first one because we opened the box before we started the video or the stream. But we've got Canadian Club 45 here, which
Hmm.
came as a great surprise that they would release it after releasing annual releases of 40, 41, 42, 43, 44 year old whiskeys every year for 5 previous years.
Yeah, I
Um,
thought for sure they were going to start counting backwards at this point.
yeah, but they did it. I think this is the last release they did in this, and it's a 1978, which is a great vintage, as we all know.
Yeah.
Uh, Probably the greatest vintage, as we've discussed in previous tastings. Nick, thanks for joining us. We've only just gotten started. So, decadent, fruity, a little bit kind of, I don't know, antique dusty on the nose too. Like there's a musty old oak note coming through.
Yeah. And to what you were saying there, uh, this is all 1977 stock, from what I understand.
What? Not
Yep.
78? Is that why it's better? No, that can't be.
Yeah.
Jen would say
Also a
that.
good vintage year for Port 77.
It's good vintage for my wife.
So this
Well,
one, the upside of this one too, for the 5 years of releases that they've done, is this one's at 50% alcohol, which I think does it some great benefit.
can we all just say it's about time? Uh,
Hmm. And also along with this, there's still there's rumors, and apparently they have held back some 77 for a potential 50-year-old release.
so do you think Trish let her hair up or her hair down with this one?
How can you tell?
Is that
It's
too
always gravity defying.
is that too is that too sarcastic a comment? I mean, she's from Windsor. I think that's like the style in Windsor.
Yeah.
It's like the Windsor Detroit. It's a very Windsor Detroit sort of hairstyle.
Hmm.
Like big cars with, what do they call it? Corinthian leather seats and
Yeah.
big block V8 engines. It's, I mean, it's lovely. It's decadent. It's not insanely complex on the nose.
No, it does have a really nice peach juice note for it right now for me.
So what do we believe that like this is 100% corn? Is that what we believe this to
Hmm.
be? Do they declare it? Do they tell us?
I believe they have declared it's 100% corn.
Yeah. And do they use malt or do they use enzymes to get their fermentation going?
I think in this case it would have been enzymes,
Hmm.
or they just didn't declare the barley.
Or it was Corinthian oak
That's, well, it
or
could be that.
Corinthian leather.
Yeah, the long lost strain that Chrysler drove into the ground.
Sour mash Corinthian oak. Um, it tastes great. I mean,
Hmm.
there's not a lot of 45-year-old whiskeys out there, and it's somehow still rather fresh.
Spoiler alert along those regards, though. This isn't the oldest whiskey in the lineup. In the well, it's the oldest tonight, but it's not the oldest whiskey in the calendar.
Ooh, that is a spoiler. It's quite a big spoiler, actually. I'm finding it's getting spicier and oakier. Marty, do you have any thoughts you want to share? And please know you are muted before you start speaking.
Sorry about that. Yeah, lots of butterscotch. I find that the spice kicks in just it's not immediate on the palate for me, but it just kicks in a second or two later and then kind of hangs around.
Yeah, very sugary.
Hmm.
So Nick, to your comment, I think we have to judge it on what it is. Like this is a corn whiskey um, at 45 years of age and 50%. It's never and presumably having column stills. Like, do we know? I'm assuming columns.
I think it would be so. It's here in Walker Distillery. They probably I'm pretty sure they have a pot still, but I'm assuming this would have been column still.
I mean, this is essentially the equivalent of Scottish grain. Um, though somehow, and maybe this is a bit of bias creeping in, I expect most Scottish grains at this age would have a bit more character.
Yeah, spoiler alert, we may be able to compare that soon enough. So
Oh, okay. Well, maybe don't polish off your bottle. Um,
yeah,
there might be something else in the calendar to pit it against. But I think
yeah, there's something very Canadian about it where it's uh like
inoffensive.
polished, inoffensive, but easily forgotten in a crowd.
Yeah.
Well, polished for me in a bit of a shoe polish way.
Hmm.
It's becoming quite nutty, almost like a nut liqueur.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nick, is this mind-blowingly complex? No, but
No.
it's it's old Canadian grain whiskey, which you can call rye, even though it's 100% corn. But yeah, it is what it is. I think we wanted to throw this in there to have some Canadian representation, but also because it fit the bill for an older bottling at a admittedly a high price. I think these were coming in around 500 this time, weren't they?
Yeah.
Hmm.
But for its age, like a reasonable age to price ratio. So
Yeah.
hit the bill.
Yeah. And when we're talking about price, there's two in this lineup that are far more expensive than this one.
Yeah. And not as very good.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, Nick, I do not judge you for finding it simplistic. It is definitely one of the simpler spirits we're going to come across in this calendar. All right, I'm opening up door number 12. Let's see what we have behind it. Oh, it's wedged in there pretty good. Ooh, Rosebank. Rosebank, the Rose's 21-year-old enchantment, which, if I remember correctly, is the final release of the Rosebank, the Roses series.
Yes.
We did have Fascination, and we actually have it in store. We featured it in a tasting, but this is our first
Yeah.
time opening or pouring Enchantment, and I'm enticed. What do you know about the Rosebank Enchantment, Evan? What can you tell us about it?
Yeah. So I did read that, and I don't, maybe I tried the other one that we had in, but each one of the roses, and I think it's a series of seven,
Mm-hmm.
um, of the roses series is named after a sort of a species of rose. So there is an enchantment species when it comes to roses. Um, this was a really fun blog post to write. This is, of course, released by Elixir Distillers from stock that they have. So essentially, Sukhinder Singh and Co. Um, but it kind of coincides a little bit with the revival of a distillery that a lot of people were hoping would be revived for a long time, but then had lost hope over time because the distillery itself was in an area that wasn't doing very well for a long time in Scotland as well, and also the stills were stolen back in 2008/2009 over Christmas and New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was closed.
I hate to say it, but I like that a lot better than the Fascination.
Yeah, it's the thing about corn versus barley is there's just more weight and on the palate even like it has a depth that it creates.
Or sorry, Evan, I mean the Unity, the last release of Rosebank we had,
Oh,
because
fair enough.
I think that one had a much bigger impact from the Madeira casks on it. Um,
Mm,
I'll put that up here. It doesn't say it, but I seem to remember it being closer to a 50-50 um, ratio of Madeira and
Mhm.
bourbon. Whereas I noticed this one's 25 Madeira, 75 bourbon. And man, it's so much more lush. So that's the Unity,
hmm.
which is
Good call.
admittedly a better price. But
Yep.
the enchantment is a different beast. And these are rose banks that they put into demijohns like 10 years ago. Like they've been out of oak now for a decade because they didn't want them to get over oaked. They didn't want them to get over wooded. They didn't want them to mature too far. And I suspect a big part of that was the Madeira. The Madeira casks were
Hmm.
just way too active.
I wonder if they
Yeah.
used ex rum demijohns from the last consignment.
Clay vessels like packed in
Yeah,
straw. Um,
yeah.
Yeah,
it is.
I'm still getting some heat, which I seems to me a characteristic of a lot of the Madeira casts, but it's not overwhelming.
Hmm.
Oh man, to me this is doughy. It's fruity,
Mm.
floral, and tropical. And I'm getting like fancy donuts on the palate, like a nice
Yeah.
glazing, icing, a nice rich dough. Maybe
Yeah, that's a
something
good
at
call.
that. Evan, what's that coffee shop we walk over to, not far from the hotel in Victoria? Discovery, is it
Oh
Discovery?
yeah. It's
And
the
they have those
Discovery
like
coffee. Yeah.
they have those nice glazed donuts there.
Yeah,
Big
those are delicious.
big fan, especially when you're hungover. It's a great hungover donut
Nobody gets hungover at the Victoria Whiskey Festival though.
every day, every day. Um, very pretty.
Yeah, so I think one of the things to talk about here too is it's interesting because if you were to name the top three closed distilleries that everybody wants to try and is sought after, it's typically going to be Port Ellen and Brora, and then Rosebank is probably the next one on the list for a lot of people. The difficulty with Rosebank is that they're triple distilled, so their whiskey wasn't necessarily meant to last this long in a lot of cases as well, and never had the boldness of a Port Ellen or a Brora in style as well. But the cool thing about all three of those distilleries is they are all just about up and running now. I think Port Ellen's got to be close at this
Yeah.
point as well.
I'm of a number of different minds on that. But mostly, I'll be honest, I mostly feel cynical about most of those revivals. I think Brora is the
Yeah.
only one I can sort of get behind because it's the equipment was left in there. They just kind of closed it,
Hmm.
and it needed some work to get going again. But like Port Ellen's a brand new distillery. It's not the same distillery. It's on the same site.
No.
It's brand new. Don't try to pretend it's something it's not. And Rosebank, you can kind of make the argument for. I think they've tried to do a good job of making it as
Authentic.
authentic as possible, but I don't know.
Hmm.
I just don't like the idea of pretending it's the same.
Yeah. It is a distillery I want to visit because it's you do a little bit of background information on the location, and it's got the Falkirk wheel
Mhm.
and the Kelpies pretty close by, which are some pretty cool big pieces of metal.
The Falkirk wheel is interesting to go see,
Hmm.
but then after a while, you're just like, okay, well, I saw that. I don't know why I don't know that you would
Yeah.
necessarily want to get on one of the barges or boats that goes in it because then
No,
you're
because it'd be a long
stuck.
and boring wait. Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes about 30 minutes to get from the bottom to the top. So it's a slow process.
Yeah. It's fun to watch other people though. But the Kelpies is a pretty cool sculpture as well, and pretty massive in size.
Mm. Um, wow, it's lush, really floral, classic Rosebank profile, soft fruits, and it's got a bit of spice and a bit of heat. And Marty, to be totally honest with you, I think part of that is just the distillate because the distillate is distilled, it's triple distilled to like a higher level of purity.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
But man, that's pretty. I want to like this one less than the Unity because Unity was exclusive to us and it's cheaper. But this is so pretty. I mean, and Unity's good, but this is like a step above Unity.
Hmm.
Um, Incidentally, Yanni's Donuts, I guess, is the donut supplier to Discovery Coffee. So Yanni, well done on the donuts, whoever you are. Um, any other thoughts or comments on this guy before we move on? I know Nick, I noticed you said you thought a drop of water opened it up. The
Yeah, I'm
only
just trying that
sacrilege
myself.
there was the use of the word open it up.
Yeah.
Water, I mean, you can use water. I think water is fine. People love to use it. I just personally, and if you haven't heard my rant on this, I might as well just do it really quickly. The reason I don't like the term open up is because I don't think that's necessarily what happens when you add water to it, you change it. The question is, do you change it for the better or the worse? And only the person that can know is you. But what it is it's actually causes a chemical reaction that releases heat. And there's a process that happens that will change either in a small way or a big way the aromas and flavors that come off of it. But the opening it up, and people say this all the time, it's it's just a gross kind of oversimplification. So
Hmm.
a lot of water, a lot of whiskeys sometimes are closed, and maybe adding a bit of water will break the surface tension or will shake it up a little bit. Um, and some whiskeys, to be honest, are just too hot. They're too sharp. They need a drop of water or more to make them more interesting. Um, but that's terminology that a lot of people use because brand ambassadors come over for Scotland and they say it all the time. Oh, just add a drop of water to open it up. And usually I'm like, my teeth are grinding, trying not to make any noise. But it's,
I think that's mostly because it reminds you of a short little whiskey guy from Willow Park that's
oh,
retired.
yeah, there's, that might be it too. It's all wrapped together. But yeah, if you like it with water and you find that it improves the experience for you, I think that's awesome. Um, I can see that. Like this is still a whiskey that's big enough where I think you could have that kind of impact on it, and it does have some heat on it. So, there is a bit of sharpness there, but
Yeah.
man, I love it the way it is. Like it's to me, I love that concentration of flavor and the richness coming off of it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe a better way of putting it is like if you were going to put it in concert terms, adding water is like going from the this first row in the bowl of seats down into the mosh pit. That's what we were trying to say, right?
You've lost me. You've lost me on that, but I'll take it. I'll take it. But the other thing to acknowledge there too is, and I think the reason why I get really triggered by the water bit is because for the longest time, a lot of the brand ambassadors that come would tell people to add water before they'd even nosed or tasted the whiskey. And to me, like you potentially are going to ruin that person's experience, or maybe it
Yep.
won't be as good as it could have been if you're telling them what to do with it. I think it's because I reject the idea that anyone should tell somebody else how to drink their whiskey.
Yeah, it's the libertarian in you. Um, I do tend to agree with that, especially in tasting though, that and my feeling on it is you need a form of control in a tasting where everybody starts off on the same page.
Yeah,
And if you're adding water to it, you can't add water exactly for every single person. So you need to have the start without water, where you're all starting at the same alcohol level, and then you decide how you want to drink it from there.
agreed. All
Yeah.
right, day 13, Tullibardine, Berry Brothers and Red, 26-year-old. This, I think, must be one of, if not the best value propositions
Mhm.
from a dollar's perspective that you can actually buy from the Uber calendar this year. Um, it's a distillery that we don't see very many mature bottlings from, other than, quite frankly, the very disappointing or at best average releases that they put out officially, the 20 and
Mhm.
25, which are watered down to 40 and 43%. But from our friends at Berry Brothers and Rudd, the 300 and what is it now? 35-year-old wine merchant or something like that in London. We've got a 26-year-old Barry's Tullibardine cask.
Yeah. This shows like what Tullibardine is in such a good manner. Like it is so starchy on the palate.
I was gonna say
And
it's just
so,
barnyard. There's like a
yeah,
barnyardness to it, like hay and old
Hey,
stable,
yeah.
dusty old
yeah,
stable.
yeah, it's grain plus dunnage essentially.
Yeah,
Mm.
But it totally reminds me of, and I've used this in a few different tastings, but when I was when I was a toddler, as a kid, my grandparents had a dog, and this was before I was found to be asthmatic and allergic to dogs. But I used to hang out as a toddler in diapers and chase after this dog called Spatsy, which was my grandparents' dog. And Spatsy got Milk-Bone dog biscuits, so I made sure to steal those Milk-Bone dog biscuits whenever I could. And that's the reason my teeth are so good at this point, actually, too. But it reminds me of like Milk-Bone dog biscuits. You used to get those old like sort of watered down color wise, green and red and brown ones. I don't know if they even make them anymore, but it just reminds me of that smell in a big, big way. And I see this bottle is sold out now that I gave that tasting note.
Oh,
Mm,
there's no more telebardine to be had?
No,
really?
I was joking about that last part.
Oh, that's good. You were saying your Milk-Bone note was what sold it out. Is that where you were
That's
going with
right. That's right.
that? Okay, that's, I mean, ambitious. And Evan, it's good that we finally got this clarification because I don't believe it's the first time you've trotted out a Milk-Bone
No,
tasting note before.
but it is a legitimate tasting note. It's a sense memory from when I was a 3-year-old, I guess.
Do you at heart really just wish you had a dog?
I wish I had some Milk-Bone dog biscuits every now and then, but no, I'm good without a dog.
Yeah, it would just be like adding a toddler to your 3 children.
You already
Yeah,
got enough
yeah,
toddlers, yeah.
yeah. I already have three things to run around and clean up after. So
Man, it's so malty. There's so much like
yeah,
hay in this. Um,
but this is Tulabardine style for me. It's just like it is so malt forward in all their releases. It's just crazy.
and like there's a tanginess to it too. It's like
Hmm.
Yeah.
someone's found a way to extract like the bitter, savory notes from fruit, but without the sweetness.
Yeah,
Jeff, funny comment about Walter and Evan stealing his treats, but Walter's on an all meat diet, so it might be a different experience for Evan than if he were to bite into a
that's
milk.
right. Yeah, it's more likely to be you don't know him, but Brian stealing his treats based on that.
To go with his espresso and dark
Yeah,
chocolate.
yeah. This is
Example.
espresso, dark chocolate, protein, and 10% plus alcohol beer diet that he has.
And he does watch these tastings from time to time because he's made references to them. So he
Yeah.
might be watching this one, Brian. If you're watching, uh,
Cheers, man. Yeah.
keep looking Uber. So, uh, I have to say, like, I remember, I know I wrote a tasting note on this ages ago. I
Yeah, I
don't
think
remember.
I've got it. We've got both of ours up there now. I'll actually share it here.
Uh, that wasn't the purpose. Like, I don't feel a need to share it, but I kind of don't feel as impressed by this as I did when I wrote my tasting note.
Well, and this is the reason this came in, isn't it? Is because you tried it at a London whiskey show or something like that?
No, actually, the story for this is far more mundane. Another retailer who shall remain nameless um, committed to a bunch of this. The importer brought it in, and then they decided they didn't want it anymore. And when I heard the story about this, I like the importer and especially the guy I deal with. So I was like, well, if
Hmm.
I bring in a couple cases, will you buy me a bottle? And he was like, sure. So we brought it in and bought it, and I think we even got a deal on it at some point. He dropped the price.
Yeah.
Um, it's lovely, but I don't know, like it doesn't stack up to the Rosebank or in some ways even the Canadian Club.
Yeah. It's got a big New York fries note to it right now on the palate for me.
I could see that, like the greasy
Yeah.
paper wrapping that it comes in.
Yeah. Well, and even it's the fries cut where the skins are on it and then put in oil.
Mhm.
Mm.
I mean,
But I still think it's one of the better Tullibardines I've tried at this age. Tullibardine just has this like very grain forward starchy style. It's only a distillery that's been around since 1945 or so, or no, 1950. It was like the first distillery built after World War II to come online, if I remember correctly, in Scotland. And it's also a cool vintage because it's a vintage where when Tullibardine was purchased by an independent company, it was a bunch of 1988s, 1993s, and a few 1994s that I think we saw coming through first.
Yeah. Well, that's because they stopped production in 93 and didn't reopen
Yeah,
until 2003.
that's
Um,
right.
one of my favorite random facts about Telebardine was, I don't know if you've come across this in all your readings, Evan, but they were very proud of the single form concrete roof in their warehouse, which had no pillars, and it was like the largest single form concrete roof of its kind,
Until
if
the
not
boat.
in Scotland, then the UK. And you go in there and you look at it and you're like, cool.
Yeah,
Like, I guess this is the height of post-war brutalist concrete technology is you
yeah,
guys didn't need pillars for your warehouse. Awesome.
yeah.
Hmm.
And then the Calgary Tower had to be built and just decimate that whole concept.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of hope one day we can put like a second level on it. I mean, because
Just to make it the tallest building again.
it kind of feels a bit unambitious now. Like
Yeah,
there's like 30 buildings or more taller than it in the city.
yeah. I think we should just do a pillar and still keep the restaurant and everything at the same level, just
Hmm.
for fun.
I'm getting notes of like blueberry pie now, but maybe a blueberry pie that was not made with enough sugar.
Hmm. And it's all crust.
Oh, I think there's a fair bit of blueberry in there, but it's just really tart.
Hmm.
Or maybe what's it, Saskatoonberry. Saskatoonberry is definitely more on the bitter side than
Yeah,
blueberry.
yeah, it is.
Lemony finish, salty finish for Frederica. All right. Well, I think we've talked in circles enough about that Telebardine. Let's crack another window and see what we've got.
Yeah, let's
It's
get to onto the boring stuff in the lineup.
what's that?
I said let's get onto the boring stuff in the lineup.
Well, ooh, single malts of Scotland, Clynelish. This is a treat. I forgot that we put this in the calendar
Yeah,
altogether.
yeah, I
Um,
was excited to come across this one.
and you want to know even some better news? We just got offered another case of it because someone didn't take theirs. So,
Cool.
Oh,
um, 26-year-old Clynelish. What can we say? We love a good Clynelish. This has clearly got a sherry influence to it.
Absolutely.
Um, like, look at the color on it.
yeah.
Clynelish is that Highland distillery that often has a nice waxy profile to it. Evan, what can you tell us about this single malt of
So
Scotland?
yeah, sherry, of course, based on the color, is a good call and the nose. It was matured in a sherry butt. I think I put marriage actually, but it's not a marriage. It's the regular Clynelish single cask, 50.7% alcohol. Um, yeah, we did have a really good cask from these guys, the single malts of Scotland of Clynelish as well, which was kind of a
Yeah.
shock at the time, and even more shocking now that we ever got one.
And it was 24 years of age and less than, well, about 40% the price.
Yeah. But
Oh,
this is like really cool, sort of austere sherry. It almost goes into some of the balsamic notes that our SMOS Ben Nevis had in a cool fashion. It's not quite as going into the sour side of things though, in that way. It's just
Yeah.
lively.
oh man, this is old school. This is,
Hmm.
The waxy furniture polish on this just
Yep.
yeah,
oh, but even
beautiful.
there's a nice mix of tropical fruit in there, but also like candied fruit, Christmas cake,
Mm.
the tobacco, leather. I mean, there's so many layers to that. That is exactly what I wanted it to be. Good
Yeah.
Lord.
This is actually even better than when I did the tasting
Yeah.
note up for it for me.
Yeah. Very drying tannins on the end, but
Mhm.
it's really good.
Yeah, drying, but like no bitterness really
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah. Not bitter, but
It's
drying. Yeah.
it's it's more into like cola cube notes and stuff like that with it.
Mm.
Well, and some menthol,
Hmm.
and like spearmint tones coming off of it too. Oh, I can be done. I don't even need to know what's behind the next door. I could just finish drinking this and
Yeah. Jeff
put the phone
says
down.
I still have half a bottle of the KWM GNM Kleinlich from a couple of years ago. That one was fantastic as well.
Oh yeah, the 30
Um,
volt. The
yeah,
the one that when I posted this as a steal, because it was what was it, $150?
yeah,
Um, somewhere in that range. And I posted on Instagram that it was a steal. And then the commercial director for Gordon MacPhail, who is an ex-Macallan guy, was like, "Sounds like we didn't charge you enough." Um, anyway, what are you gonna do? It was more or less gone by that point in time anyway.
yeah,
But yeah,
that's right.
for anyone who didn't, and maybe Frederica tried it at some point, but we had that 24-year-old syrupy, fruity, like agave nectared Kleinlich 24-year from Single Malts of Scotland that was just a banger. And I think it was $340.
Yeah,
And I was nervous about it. I was like, oh man, like this is pretty pricey. And I think it's sold out in like 6 weeks.
yeah. Well, that was yeah, the single malts of Scotland one, and I think that what made you worried about it is that we got an Imperial and Ben Nevis in pretty much the same time, and all of them were older. But those three casks were just knockouts.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, they all went pretty quick.
Yep.
This is
Yeah, the
this
Ben Nevis was kind of the sleeper of the bunch, but once people realized that was so good too, that it didn't last.
I mean, the sherry tones on this is straying into some of those like 72 Glendronachs in terms of profile. And
Yeah.
it's also
Mm.
reminding me of like some of those old like 70s sherry matured Glenglasses.
Hmm.
That's a really nice bottle. It's when I say old school, like this just has the feel of like old whiskeys from 15, 20 years ago, that were made in the 60s or the 50s or the 70s. And man, that's I don't know what's coming up next, but that's going to be tough to beat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely one of those whiskeys for me where, and I am definitely not like to the point of surge or whiskey sponge on how I do my tasting notes. I essentially just rifle them off, but this is like you could taste this over days and just get more and more notes on it. Like there's
Yeah.
just no end to it.
Yeah. It's really nice sherry without any, to me, any hint of sulfury tones.
Mhm.
So Nick's asking, how is it compared to the 24? Nick, do you mean the 24 like cask that we had that we were referring to, or is it different 24? Oh, on the Frederica mentioned. Oh, it's very different. So that one,
Mhm.
I'll try to pull it up on our archive. That was a cask that was, I believe, very active fresh bourbon. So you didn't get any of the chocolate, tobacco, leather sort of tones. It was more just gooey, syrupy, and just really, really fruity.
Mhm.
It was a different beast. I mean, both were gorgeous, are gorgeous ballings, but it was a very different cat.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we didn't talk about it. Marty mentioned it, but like, there's a waxiness to it, but it's not like insanely waxy.
No.
No, no, it's not.
No, where are we
No,
here?
it's more a waxiness that comes to mind when you think of it being Clynelish than the just the waxiness of the whiskey itself.
Mhm. Hopefully we have a photo of this one. Oh, it looks like we do. Here, I can share it. So you can actually see on this, 185 bottles, 24 years, and it was a hogshead, but probably a first fill ex-bourbon hogshead, if I'm guessing. But yeah, very,
This
very
is
different
the
whiskey.
Smoss one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this was the KWM cask. And mercifully, you can't see the price on it because it is quite a bit better priced. But granted, this was 4 years ago. It was a different, more innocent time. And you couldn't, yeah, you just couldn't get like, you know, a deal like that anymore. No one's got
Yeah.
stock like that. If they did, they wouldn't
Yeah.
sell it.
And so comparison wise, Nick, it was a very different beast because it was likely ex-bourbon. It had more of those ex-bourbon spice notes that you get as well versus this one, whereas this one is a lot more sherry driven. And it leaned into the tropical and go instead of going into dried fruit notes. But it was like the just a great amalgamation of tropical fruit and these old cedar notes for me.
I learned something about the box just now, opening the window. There's a correct direction to open each window so you don't tear the box. Um,
Wow.
but, but it's not always the same direction. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's to the side. But I just noticed now, and you can tell from the
Oh, that's
perforation.
fantastic.
I learned a little something there tonight. So there you go.
So each window is ergonomic, but like the
Well,
box
I mean,
itself is, yeah.
we got to get through 2 more tastings with this thing, and we don't want it to look too beaten up.
Yeah.
So, all right. Oh, nice, satisfying little pop there. All right, McNair's Lumreek 21 year. Evan, what sort of beast do we have here?
Yeah, so this is kind of it's a toughie because it came in 4 years ago, 3 years ago, at about this price range. Like it hasn't changed too much in price. And when it was first released, I think it was too expensive. Now it's actually looking like more and more of a value when you consider what it is for me. So at least 21 years old. It's a blended malt put together by Billy Walker of Glenallachie, previously Ben Riach, Glendronach, and Glenglass of fame. Um, a guy that really knows his stuff and sort of cut his teeth on the blending side of things over the years prior to getting into the owning distillery game and being in control of more stuff. But it's in my opinion, a fantastic blended malt that doesn't really get its due. And that pretty much goes for the whole range, but there's something about this 21 that I really enjoy. So blended malt wise, it's probably got some Glenallachie in it since that's the distillery that Billy Walker owns currently. Kalila makes up the peated side of things, if I remember correctly. And it's aged and matured and probably finished in a combination of ex-bourbon, red wine, and ex-PX sherry casks, 48% alcohol.
So, Evan, I in a different conversation unrelated to this product today, I came up with an apt explanation for a product like this that
Mm-hmm.
sort of explains why it's underappreciated. It's a product in search of a customer. Like someone's
Yeah,
come up with like a cool concept and idea. They think it's awesome. It's at a good price point, but is there a customer actually looking for it?
it's
And
very
my
true.
answer to that is I don't know. And I'm, to be honest, a lot of the times I don't think there is. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's like a lot of these undeclared mystery peated or Isla malts. Like the concept could be good, the liquid could be good, the price could be good, but is there actually somebody that wants it? Or do they just want Lafroig quarter cask or Ardbeg 10?
I think this
Mm-hmm.
is one of those that somebody may not be interested in buying unless they really try it.
Which is a hard way to sell a
Yeah,
product on a macro level.
yeah.
Yeah,
Unless it's like,
yeah. I think the lesson. Well, one way we could sell it is give people a taste of this and have the other dram be like the what was day six's dram again, the Middleton Very Rare,
mhm.
and it's probably going to show really well both flavor and price wise versus that. But
Well,
it's
and
a toughie.
as long as the person doesn't hate peat, you might
Yeah.
have an opportunity there. Be like, look, this is half the price, and it's a way better product.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a tough, as I said, that's a tough way to build a market and sell things. Like, it's one thing for us if we have a single cask to shout about how good our single cask is and give people a chance to try it. It's another thing for something like this where they're like, hey, you like single malts? Here's something you're not looking for. Now let me see if I can convince you to buy it.
That's right. Yeah, and sometimes it's kind of fun to try and roll the rock uphill when trying to sell to a customer, but not always. And it takes a
Mm.
lot of time to do that in a lot of cases too. So this McNair's is a brand along with White Heather blend wise that Billy Walker acquired when from Pernod Ricard when you purchased Glenallachie. I kind of feel like they were almost throw-ins, most likely, and to get Glenallachie sold on the Pernod Ricard side of things, and it's almost been a brand that's, as Andrews put it, has been kind of looking for a market to sell in a lot of cases. Like the whiskey that they put together for the Lumerick series is all really good. I love
Uh,
the orange oil notes that come off this, along with the smoke and peat, but it's not one that jumps off the shelves, partially because of the name, and partially because nobody knows what they're getting into.
well, and also the packaging, man. Like, look,
Yeah,
I mean, this is the prior rendition of it,
yeah, which
which,
was fantastic. Yeah.
but still, like, I don't know, this doesn't make me want to buy it. And
No, it looks like it's like an alcoholic dying in a fire
this
is what it looks
this
like.
this is an improvement, but I still don't know what it is by looking at it. I think that's the challenge. And
Yeah. No, this
um,
is it's Billy Walker like falling in love with an idea of something that maybe probably would have sold more in the time that it was first released.
yeah. I mean, the Glen Alki really shines through on that.
Hmm.
The peat, the peat level is fairly bold. Like it's an interesting whiskey, but it might just be too clever for its own good.
Yep. No, I think so. It's not too far off what it is, but if you called this the Flaming Heart 2022 release, it would sell better because
Um,
there's some through lines on those two drams, in my opinion.
Hmm.
so Nick's saying the previous one looked tacky. It did look a little tacky, to be fair. And I mean, I think anytime you're kind of using stereotypic Scottish imagery to sell a whiskey just doesn't work. And I think that's one of the reasons why the remarkable regional malts don't do well. Like no one cares about Sweet Wee Scallywag or the Timorous Beastie or the
Hmm.
Epicurean. There's a market perhaps for Big Pete, but I don't think that that's what Scotch drinkers want. I don't know what direction they should have gone in this, but I don't think they needed to. I don't know. It's a
Yeah,
shame.
it's a tough
Liquid's
one.
quite good.
Yeah,
The liquid is quite good.
yeah, yeah. You look at what a lot of companies that are releasing peated whiskey are doing, and it's a much more brash style of marketing when you look at Pete's Beast and Mr. Pete and stuff like that,
Yeah.
where like it kind of tells you what you're getting on the bottle. And not that this is a lot more refined from based on or compared to those ones, but it's not. There's
Mhm.
something about the marketing side of things that just doesn't click.
Yeah, this is the peat on this is if you're looking for a peated whiskey, this is kind of restrained in
Hmm.
that direction.
Yeah. Well, it's the sherry notes from the Glenallachie
Yeah,
are. It's a nice touch. I
it's
guess
nice.
I just want to know, was that Glenallachie that they put in their good 21-year-old that we could have sold or just drank on its own rather than put into this blended malt
Yeah.
and lost to eternity.
Yeah.
So
Damn it, Billy. These could have been lottery bottles.
they could have been lottery bottles. Not that I want to lottery them. I fucking hate doing lotteries, by the way. Just so that's out there. Like lotteries take a lot of time, and I got to weed out real customers from, you know, cherry pickers. And then sometimes you're like, well, did that guy get a Springbank last time? Okay, maybe they don't get one this time. It's a lot of work. So lotteries, let me just say it. I think it's time for
Yeah, I
this.
think Jeff has a solution on that for you.
Just give me first tips on everything. That's it's a sentiment, that's for sure. It's a sentiment.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Back to Canadian Club, 45 year. It's are we allowed to talk about Aunt Jemima anymore, or is that was that canceled?
You can say pancake syrup.
Pancakes, okay, like butter flavored pancake syrup.
Hmm. Say President's Choice brand butter flavored pancake syrup.
Okay, whatever they serve you at a Stampede breakfast, that's what it smells like.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, it
maybe,
honestly, like
Yeah.
as much as it was neutral to start with, it stayed pretty stable in the glass.
Jeff, you nailed it. I think
It's still neutral.
if I'd said the pancake syrup formerly known as Aunt Jemima, then people know exactly what I was talking about.
That's right.
But I wasn't reinforcing a negative stereotype of a brand that's been um,
Yeah.
retired. Anyway, it,
Yeah.
it
I would
hasn't
have called it
changed.
Aunt Jemima before I was woke.
You would have or you wouldn't have.
No, that's what you could tell people.
Oh, but I'm not. I mean, I'm not woke. I'm sensitive to not offending people, but I wouldn't personally describe myself as anyway. Whatever. There's
I'm
too
just
many things to know
I'm
about.
just willing to offend somebody on something like that.
I think I offend people on a daily basis, mostly unintentionally.
That's right.
It's fine. It's just, you know, it's
Yeah.
it seems even tighter now than it was when we first went by it. Like it's the
Hmm.
profile has narrowed up some,
Back to the Rosebank?
but at least we've got Rosebank. Oh man.
Barely. Mine's pretty much done already.
Marty, remember when we sold 12-year-old Rosebank? Were you at the shop
Well,
when we still had, was that out? That was before your time? Well, it can't have been that
well,
your time.
I don't remember specifically what we sold, that long ago, but yeah.
Well, there was like a
Definitely some
Gordon
G&M
MacPhail,
releases. Yeah.
yeah, like a Gordon MacPhail
Yeah.
95 Rosebank that I think the youngest one I
Yeah,
remember was a
I
12-year-old.
would have been in the shop at that time. So
2007, 8, somewhere in
yeah.
that room. God. And I remember Andy
But
being like, it's a closed distillery. And I'm like, it's only 12 years old.
yeah, back then it didn't mean a lot to me.
Really didn't. Sort of going into like jujubes now on the nose. Not a very speedy round, this one.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's still beautiful. Like it's
Yeah.
got a little bit of like a strawberry and licorice note, like
Yeah.
almost into Twizzlers on the nose right now.
Yeah. It's just putting the CC to shame on that one.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Jeff, not to get either of us in trouble, but are you suggesting that Aunt Jemima has been unfairly maligned by the present day? Or is it perhaps someone monetizing her likeness to sell a product? Food for thought. What did they say? What did Mike Myers used to say on SNL? You discuss or something like
Yeah.
that. I'm all verklempt. You
Yeah.
discuss.
Oh, yeah. Discuss amongst yourselves is what it
Discuss
was.
amongst
Yeah.
yourselves. I'm already onto the Tullibardine, which has grown on me now. It's like cold pies the next morning. And it could be a cold apple pie, it could be a cold blueberry pie. And maybe because the pie is cold, you don't get the sweetness off of it, but it's definitely doughy and fruity.
Yeah. Well, it's also like kettle cooked potato chips where they cost like $8 a bag. It's not the cheap stuff.
Oh, the palate though is, I don't know. It's going into like horse stables that haven't been cleaned out frequently enough.
Yeah. Oh, now it's sold out, Andrew.
Yeah. Well, the nose is more like the blueberry pies, but the palate's moving a little meatier, like into almost a tortilla.
I mean, like,
Oh, that's a good call.
or like old horse pie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tortilla.
Well, God, yeah, I'm struggling with that one. All right, Kleinlish, I need redemption. My palate's gone from the highs of Rosebank down to the lows of some stable that's been ridden hard and put away
Yeah.
wet. And I need to
Even
get
though there's not as many people showing on it, there's going to be 40 people expecting a refund on their Uber calendar tomorrow.
well, they should have reached out to us 2 days ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, man, that Kleinlish is gorgeous.
Yeah, it does just get better and better. There's like just this great sour fruit note on the nose too.
That's fun. Really like that. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
part of me that wishes it was not. What is it? Is it $800? Is that the price? Somewhere in that realm.
Yeah. Good news, it's sold out.
It
It's good news because that you won't be able to buy one. Is that it?
no,
That's right.
there's more coming. I
Oh,
can get.
really?
I've got another case coming next week.
Oh, okay.
They just told me
Good
that
news, we can get more.
somebody's had one in their allocation for like 3 months and hasn't pulled it, so we get it.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Well, it's worth bringing in.
I've just
No, it's nice.
reflagged that
That's good.
as pre-order, but yeah, it's still $800, and man, I long for the days of yesteryear. It's tough. Uh,
Yeah, these Kleinliches are hard to resist.
all right, McNair's. We're back to McNair's. It's
That's our moniker for Kleinlich that gets to this price should be Kleinlich. At least it's not Barora. I really love this McNair's. Like just the combination of peat and fruit there is really fantastic.
it's easily in my top five whiskeys in tonight's tasting. To paraphrase Chris
Top four.
Walker, who's not here,
Top four, Andrew. There was like CC 45 in there.
who, by the way, when his wife called him out on that overused comment tonight, amazing. Amazing. Yeah, no, to be fair, this is top three. I'm totally. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to declare my favorites here.
Yeah.
Yeah. You start us off, man.
All right. To be honest, it's not it's not that hard. It's not that hard for me. The Kleinlich is clearly my number one. Rosebank is a close second. Just for sheer beauty, I think that Rosebank might be a slightly prettier whiskey. But if I wanted to like drink something, I think I would want the Kleinlich. And the McNair's Limerick is great. Like it's a great product. I still think it is a great product in search of a consumer, and we don't know
Mhm.
where the consumer is, but it's there. If I were to order the other two, it would be Canadian Club and then Tullabarda. I I'm really struggling with that Tullabarda tonight, which is so funny because I remember when I tried it and I was like, oh, this is pretty good. And maybe it was a different night, different bottle. Maybe it's where my palate's at tonight.
Mhm.
Maybe it's that we're 10 days from Christmas and I'm feeling tired and I'm less charitable than I might have been previously, but it's just not doing the trick for me tonight.
Mhm. Marty?
Well, I don't like to copy Andrew on that, but it's the same thing for me, the Kleinlich was far and away the first choice. The Rosebank second, really did quite like it, and the Lumreek is a nice third. Uh, the Tullibardine I liked. It's well above any of the two like the 20-25-year-old distillery labels, but for some of the old Tullibardines we used to get, like our Kensington
Mhm.
bottles or some of the old ones we used to get, it's not quite there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it is actually one of the distilleries where getting a naked Tullibardine doesn't help. Um, it does need some cask influence to it,
Hmm.
You know
unfortunately.
what, Evan? That might be a quotable moment for the calendar. Um,
And they,
Tullibardine, to paraphrase, might be one of the few distilleries where no one's looking for a naked bottling.
Yeah.
So
Well, if I can get a royalty for the next Uber calendar, I'm happy to have
you
that
know
quote out
what,
there.
Evan? If only we had somebody willing to execute on T-shirt ideas, that would be a
Yeah, that's
T-shirt.
right. Yeah, we're still looking for a hire on that. That can just follow through.
We thought we had someone, but they didn't work, turn out to be a good fit, and vice versa. So,
Yeah.
um, cool. Well, looks like our colleagues are the people who joined us tonight have shared their favorites. Nick saying Kleinlich, Rosebank, Tullibardine, and McNair's. Canadian. Yeah. In some ways, just calling it Canadian seems
Yeah.
kind of like a fun, what do you call that?
Yeah.
Like swatting or something? I don't know. But
So, uh, just as a side note to that, with my uh, there's a magazine that I've written for that's online, and I have a Canadian whiskey column planned, which is going to essentially rail against the whole idea of Canadian whiskey, which I'm really looking forward to writing because it's going to try and combine the whole idea with the concept of being Canadian on the international stage as well. Because it just goes into like how Canadian whiskey is just like it's polite. It's nothing else. It's just really polite when it comes down to
you should get Don Livermore to give you a quote on that.
it. Yeah, I'm sure that'll happen.
Uh, all right, Frederica saying Kleinlich, Rosebank, McNair's, and Jeff Scott Kleinlich. Tully number 2, Jeff, my lord. For reals? Oh, wow. Rosebank, McNair's, CC. Just need some ginger ale. You know what? If I had ginger ale here, I would try a little CC
Yeah,
45 and ginger ale. That would be an interesting combo.
yeah. Nick Way has a very suspect comment on here too, where he says better than Alberta Premium, which
Oh,
I don't know which whiskey that's in context to, but them's fighting words, Nick.
well, I guess maybe
Yeah,
not
well,
everybody likes the big peppery spice.
I mean,
Yeah.
we had some great casks of Alberta Premium Rye that came through
Mhm.
Shelter Point.
Vancouver Island. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it turns out the trick of maturation with for Alberta Premium Rye is to mature them on the island. That's what it takes.
It's you know what? Apparently there are some big things planned for Alberta distillers. I truly hope they do something with it.
Yeah.
It's a brand that I think needs more love than it gets. And interestingly, apparently that Canadian Club 15 that came out recently is Alberta Distillers juice. So
They should just call it that.
oh,
yeah.
that sherry cast one.
But
Yeah.
that's anyway. It's a whole thing. I don't want to get into it. It's a rant
Mhm.
get started on that'll, it won't be fun for anybody. But there is some weird stuff happening out there. But I do truly hope that they give that distillery some due because it's the ugliest distillery in Canada in Calgary's least scenic neighborhood. And
Yep.
yet it produces a rye that people love and proclaim when they think it's from Vermont or California or wherever. So
Yeah. I drive by that very often on the way to work just to get the combination of feeling angry and also feeling love at the same time. So
it's complex emotions.
that's
Uh,
right.
well, gents, anything to add before we wrap for the night?
Well, I'll give my top five. Nobody wants it at this point, but I'm going to take the
I,
McNair's as
the
my number
joke, Evan,
one.
was I already
Yeah.
thought you had given it to us. So,
No, McNair is my number one. I just
wow.
really enjoy that whiskey. The Kleinlich I enjoyed, but I love Kleinlich and ex bourbon or refill so much that sherry just doesn't click in the same way for me.
Yeah.
Fair. Okay. And what about the also rents?
Well, it'll be Rosebank for number three for sure.
Yeah. And what about 4 and 5, since we all kind of went there anyway?
Uh, for like Vive la différence sake, I think I got to go with the Tullibardine just because it's unlike any other whiskey you really get to try. So
Hell, it was Jeff's number 2, so
that's right.
here you go.
Jeff,
Well,
we're almost simpatico except for our love and hate relationship over Lecheg. So
well, I don't want to put an early end on this, but I'm going to call it because I'm working straight through till Christmas. You guys are welcome to stick around and chat if you want. No pressure on anyone for that. Evan, I've just made you host, so
yeah,
I'm out. But thanks for joining us tonight, everybody. Glad you enjoyed the tasting. Appreciate you tuning in to do the tasting with us because we like doing it, and even though it's our second one of the night, it was still fun. So until next time, I guess Wednesday. Is it Wednesday? Till Wednesday.
That sounds about right.
Tuesday?
The 20th. Yeah.
Wednesday.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Whatever Wednesday.
Wednesday.
All right. See you then. Anyway, good night,
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah. Good night.
Night.